Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Friday, July 25th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today will reach a warm 86.2 degrees Fahrenheit with a comfortable low of 63.1 degrees overnight. A good day for outdoor activities, but remember to stay hydrated. Coming up on Alex's News, we'll delve into the evolving dynamic and underlying reasons for the notable clashes between Donald Trump and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, examining the implications of their differing views. And we'll break down the significant financial challenges confronting California's state university system as it grapples with a substantial $2.3 billion budget gap and what this means for students and faculty alike. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. We are starting our morning with some financial fireworks out of Washington, D.C., where an unprecedented visit from President Donald Trump to the Federal Reserve has left many scratching their heads and others questioning the very independence of our nation's central bank. For more on this developing story, we turn to our financial reporter, Ethan. Ethan, give us the rundown. What exactly happened yesterday?
Grace, it was quite the spectacle. Yesterday, July 24th, 2025, President Trump made a direct visit to the Federal Reserve, marking the first time a sitting U.S. president had toured the Fed since 2006, according to NPR. But this wasn't just a friendly tour. It quickly escalated into a public, tense dispute with Fed Chair Jerome Powell, focusing on two key issues: interest rate policy and, believe it or not, the escalating costs of the central bank's headquarters renovation. It really put the Fed's crucial independence under the microscope.
So an unusual visit, turning into a very public confrontation. What was the president's beef with the renovation costs specifically? Did he bring receipts, so to speak?
He certainly brought a document, Grace. During the inspection, with Senator Tim Scott also present, the president publicly claimed the renovation project had ballooned to, quote, $3.1 billion, end quote. He waved a document to support his assertion, as reported by NPR. However, Fed Chair Jerome Powell visibly shook his head in disagreement. He then took the document, clarifying that the additional costs Trump cited were actually for a separate building completed 5 years prior.
Oh, a classic case of mistaken identity, perhaps? What are the actual renovation costs then, and why the increase?
Indeed, Grace. According to reporting from NPR, Fortune, and CNN Business, the actual estimated cost of the current overhaul of the Mariner S. Eccles Federal Reserve Building has escalated from $1.9 billion to about $2.5 billion. The Fed staff have attributed these increases to several factors: new security measures, including blast-resistant windows and shear walls to meet Department of Homeland Security standards, extensive lead and asbestos removal, general inflation affecting building projects, and soaring material prices after inflation spikes in 2021 and 2022. It is quite a project, 7 years into a 9-year plan, expected to be finished by fall 2027, which is about 768 days from now, with staff moving in by March 2028, roughly 950 days away.
Quite a bit of lead and asbestos to get out of there. Despite this public spat over, shall we say, a renovation revelation, was there any attempt to smooth things over?
Grace, Trump did later tell reporters he felt, quote, good, end quote, about his relationship with Powell, and that there was, quote, no tension, end quote, in their meeting, according to NPR. However, Brian Mena's CNN Business article characterized Trump's tour as a, quote, public relations maneuver, end quote, potentially aimed at distracting from growing scrutiny over his past relationship with financier Jeffrey Epstein and the Justice Department's handling of related files. The, quote, notoriously tight-lipped, end quote, Fed even gave a pre-tour to a handful of media outlets before Trump's visit, seen by experts as a, quote, crisis communications strategy battle, end quote, to mitigate potentially inaccurate claims from the White House. David Wessel of the Brookings Institution and Anne-Marie Maleka of Deason Resources both viewed the building renovation as a, quote, sideshow, end quote, strategy.
So a bit of a distraction. or maybe an attempt to turn the tables on the Fed. But beyond the bricks and mortar, the president has also been quite vocal about interest rates. Was that part of the discussion?
Absolutely, Grace. This visit was a highly personal and confrontational escalation of President Trump's ongoing campaign to pressure the central bank to slash interest rates, as reported by Fortune. Trump has consistently criticized Powell, whom he appointed during his first term, for keeping the short-term interest rate at 4.3% this year, after 3 cuts last year. He wants lower borrowing costs to spur the economy and reduce the federal government's debt interest. He has even publicly called Powell a, quote, numbskull, end quote, and, quote, too late, end quote, to cut rates, according to NPR. During the visit, he subtly reiterated his desire for lower rates, stating, quote, I'd love him to lower interest rates, but other than that, what can I tell you, end quote.
Sounds like he's not mincing words, even subtly. How has Chair Powell responded to this ongoing pressure, particularly regarding the current 2.7% inflation rate?
Powell, for his part, has maintained that the Fed has held interest rates steady this year due to concerns that the president's tariffs could fuel inflation and the need to observe the economy's response, as NPR and Fortune have reported. A key Fed committee is widely expected to keep rates unchanged at its upcoming meeting, which will likely disappoint the president.
Given all this tension, what about Powell's job security? The president has floated the idea of firing him before. Could this renovation dispute be the smoking gun, so to speak?
It has certainly reignited speculation, Grace. Trump has previously threatened to fire Powell, calling him an, quote, enemy, end quote, for raising interest rates during his first term, according to Fortune. He has openly stated he would not reappoint Powell when his term expires in May 2026, which is about 305 days from now, as Equity.com notes. Reportedly, Trump's administration officials are scrutinizing the renovation costs as a potential, quote, legal opening, end quote, to oust Powell, suggesting it could be grounds to fire him, quote, for cause, end quote, according to NPR, CNN Business, and Fortune. Trump even declared during the visit, quote, I'd fire them, end quote, when asked what he would do with a project manager over budget.
So what exactly does, quote, for cause, end quote, mean in this context? Can a president just fire a Fed chair over cost overruns?
That's the million-dollar question, Grace, or in this case, the $2.5 billion question. Legal scholars largely agree that a Fed chair can generally only be fired, quote, for cause, end quote, a standard interpreted to mean, quote, inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office, end quote. This interpretation stems from the landmark 1935 Supreme Court case, Humphrey's Executor versus United States, which affirmed that heads of independent agencies cannot be removed without cause, as Gemini 2.5 Pro legal definitions explain. There is no historical precedent for a U.S. president forcibly removing a Federal Reserve chair. Experts like Peter Conti Brown, a professor of financial regulation, are highly skeptical that a disagreement over project management could realistically meet this standard. He suggests, according to Gemini 2.5 Pro, that a court would likely view the focus on renovation as a, quote, pretext, end quote, for a politically motivated firing given Trump's long-standing criticism of Powell's interest rate policies. Any attempt to remove Powell would likely cause significant market disruption and a major legal battle.
So essentially, it would be a huge headache for the administration and the economy. Why is this independence so crucial, Ethan? What is the big picture here?
It is absolutely vital, Grace. The very public nature of Trump's pressure underscores the crucial importance of the Federal Reserve's independence. It is a cornerstone of its credibility and is considered vital for both U.S. and global investor confidence, as NPR and Gemini 2.5 Flash explain. An independent central bank can prioritize long-term economic health by making politically unpopular but necessary decisions, such as raising interest rates to control inflation, without fear of immediate political repercussions. This allows the Fed to focus on its dual mandate, maximizing employment and maintaining stable prices over the long run. Political interference, by contrast, can erode credibility, leading to increased market volatility, higher borrowing costs, and diminished policy effectiveness. As the U.S. dollar is the world's primary reserve currency, a politically influenced Federal Reserve could undermine international confidence.
Ethan, thank you for breaking down what was a truly unique and significant day in D.C. It certainly sheds a lot of light on the intricate dance between politics and our nation's financial stability.
My pleasure, Grace.
We'll be keeping a close eye on this story, which is just one of many important developments we're tracking this morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to our morning segment. We're turning our attention to a pressing issue affecting hundreds of thousands of students and families across California, the deepening financial crisis within the California State University system. Our reporter Chloe has the details. Chloe, what's the latest on the CSU's fiscal health?
Grace, it's a concerning picture. The CSU system, the largest four-year public university system in the United States, is grappling with a staggering cumulative budget gap of $2.3 billion. According to reporting from Lost Coast Outpost and LAist, this has increased significantly from $1.5 billion just 2 years ago, despite tuition hikes and state support. This deficit profoundly impacts CSU's roughly $9 billion operating budget.
That's a capital problem indeed. What exactly is driving this ever-widening gap?
Grace, it's a structural imbalance where operational costs are skyrocketing, but revenue isn't keeping pace, indicating a long-term financial crisis according to kpbs.org. State funding is a major factor. Governor Gavin Newsom's 2025-26 budget proposal included a $144 million reduction, a 3% cut, as reported by Lost Coast Outpost. CSU leaders are skeptical a zero-interest loan will truly bridge the gap.
So promises broken?
Effectively, yes. Lost Coast Outpost reports Cal State trustees believe Governor Newsom has violated promises from a 5-year compact for consistent funding. The fourth year's promised money, due this year, has been deferred.
And what about their internal costs?
They're piling up. LAist highlights a $310.5 million increase in labor costs alone contributing to the gap. KPBS.org notes $365 million in new mandatory costs projected for 2026-27. Individual campuses also struggle, with LAist reporting $322 million in budget shortfalls.
I've also heard whispers about administrative spending. Is that playing a role?
You're not wrong, Grace. According to SACobserver.com and KPBS.org, there's been a significant increase in non-faculty administrative spending, which critics call administrative bloat. This means more suits and fewer scholars, as Forbes.com has also noted nationwide.
So with all these challenges, what austerity measures are being implemented?
They're certainly not sitting idly by. The CSU Board of Trustees approved annual 6% tuition increases through 2028-29, starting last fall, as Lost Coast Outpost reports. That's a lot of sense for students.
And beyond tuition, what cuts are we seeing?
Drastic ones. According to Lost Coast Outpost and LAist, over 1,200 staff positions have been cut and 1,400 courses terminated. The Chancellor's Office is cutting its budget by $18 million. Some campuses, like Sonoma State University, have cut entire athletics programs, according to Reddit.
That sounds tough. What's the impact on students?
It's significant, Grace. Lost Coast Outpost reports that without more funding, CSU may redirect money from improving graduation rates. Students face larger classes, fewer course options, and potentially a longer path to graduation, impacting their degree of success.
Adding to these pressures, there's a union dispute. Can you shed some light on that?
Absolutely. Thousands of employees, including the California State University Employees Union, CSEA, are disputing whether their contracts guarantee raises this year. CSEA estimates its 35,000 members are owed $30 million more, according to Lost Coast Outpost and KPBS.org. Unions argue the state's zero-interest loan means the system is fully funded. CSU leadership vehemently disputes this.
So, on a tightrope financially, how much wiggle room do their cash reserves offer?
Not much, Grace. This is precarious. CalState.edu reports CalState's uncommitted cash reserves are approximately $760 million, enough to operate for only 1 month.
1 month? That doesn't sound very prudent.
It's far from it. CIA.gov states CSU's own policy recommends 3 to 6 months of reserves. They admit they are far below national best practices, leaving them extremely vulnerable. It's a very tight budget.
So this isn't just a hiccup, but a long-term structural issue. What's the long-term outlook and proposed solutions?
It's cumulative and structural, Grace. KPBS.org and layist.com emphasize this. CSU implemented the multi-year 6% tuition model. CalState.edu reports they are internally reallocating resources. Campuses must submit strategic plans to the Chancellor by the end of 2025, which is just over 5 months from now.
And from the state?
Layist.com and CA.gov detail deferred funding and the zero-interest loan. However, as of mid-2025, there are no prominent proposals from the California legislature for a new, permanent state funding formula to permanently close CSU's structural deficit.
Is this unique to California, or are other state university systems facing similar pressures?
Unfortunately, it's not unique, Grace. EuropeanProceedings.com highlights this reflects a broader trend nationwide. Pennsylvania's state system and New York's SUNY system have faced similar issues. Even USC, a private institution, projects over $200 million in deficit for fiscal year 2025, according to PBS.org.
Are there any systems not struggling?
Interestingly, yes. The University of Texas system boasts a very strong financial position, with a massive $47.5 billion endowment and a $28.2 billion annual operating budget, as reported by the Texas Tribune. They're clearly in a different financial league.
Indeed. Chloe, this has been an incredibly insightful and detailed look at the CSU's financial challenges. Thank you for shedding light on such a complex and critical issue.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. In international news, hopes for a truce in Gaza have crumbled as ceasefire talks in Qatar collapsed. The United States and Israel have withdrawn their negotiating teams, accusing Hamas of not bargaining in good faith. The diplomatic breakdown comes amid a catastrophic humanitarian crisis, with the United Nations reporting that a third of Gaza's population has gone days without eating, and the death toll from starvation has now climbed to at least 115, mostly children. Amid the stalemate, French President Emmanuel Macron announced that France will formally recognize a Palestinian state in September. The move, which would make France the first G7 nation to do so, has created a sharp diplomatic divide. While welcomed by the Palestinian Authority and Saudi Arabia, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned it as a move that rewards terror, while the U.S. called it reckless. French officials maintain they are, quote, backing the side of peace by supporting a two-state solution. Back in Washington, it seems some records are being kept under wraps, and now Congress is too. House Speaker Mike Johnson sent the House of Representatives home for an early summer recess, effectively halting a bipartisan push to force the release of files related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Johnson accused Democrats of, quote, playing political games. But the move came just after a House subcommittee defied leadership and voted to subpoena the Justice Department for those very files. The abrupt recess is seen by critics as a way for the Speaker to avoid a politically divisive vote before September. In a landmark legal decision, a federal appeals court has declared the Trump administration's effort to end birthright citizenship unconstitutional. The Ninth Circuit Court ruled that an executive order denying citizenship to children born on U.S. soil to non-citizen parents violates the plain language of the 14th Amendment. The court's decision affirms over a century of legal precedent, delivering a major blow to the policy. The White House says it will appeal, setting the stage for a potential showdown at the Supreme Court. There is growing fear for thousands of Afghans who worked with the U.S. military. New administration policies have frozen the special immigrant visa program and suspended refugee admissions, dismantling the pathways to safety they were promised. The termination of temporary protected status also leaves thousands of Afghans already in the U.S. vulnerable to deportation back to Taliban-controlled territory. American veterans have described a sense of moral injury, feeling the U.S. is breaking a solemn promise to allies who now face grave danger. And finally, the world's top court is turning up the heat on climate inaction. In a historic advisory opinion, the International Court of Justice declared that all nations have a legal obligation to cut greenhouse gas emissions. The ruling, initiated by the climate-vulnerable nation of Vanuatu, links environmental protection to human rights law and establishes that the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit is a legal standard. While not binding, the opinion carries immense moral weight and is expected to fuel a new wave of climate litigation, potentially forcing countries that fail to act to pay reparations for the damage caused. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.